We're now going to hear from Dr. Amahl Wahdan, who's a former Palestinian political prisoner, organizer with One Democratic State of Palestine, and founder and editor of the Arab Gazette.
On the 100th anniversary of the death of Comrade Lenin, we are facing the same odds he warned the enlightened leadership of the Bolsheviks and the national leaders of the Arab homeland from: the conspiracies of the European colonial empires of Britain and France, who secretly signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916, which resulted in the disintegration and colonization of the Arab homeland and divided it into separate countries and entities under the administration of appointed local leaders. The Palestine question during World War I was at the core interest of the U.S. Woodrow Wilson administration. In fact, the Balfour Declaration of 1917 to establish a Jewish national home in Palestine was fully supported by this administration, and it was supported by the consecutive administrations all through the British Mandate and the 1947 UN Resolution 181, known as the Partition Plan of Palestine, and the establishment of the State of Israel, all of which were all adopted and supported by the USA. The Zionist paratroops, which were trained, granted advanced ammunition, mainstream media coverage, political and diplomatic support by the British, or carried out hundreds of massacres from the south to the north and along the Mediterranean coast to force indigenous Palestinian civilians outside the borders of their homeland, Palestine. The campaign of planned ethnic cleansing resulted in exiling 950,000 Palestinians and the destroying, burning, and displacing of 675 city neighborhoods, villages, and Bedouin communities. Since 1948, the Zionist colonial apartheid state has been granted $3.8 billion from the USA in addition to other forms of financial military assistance and high-tech investments. Today, with the ongoing Nakba of Gaza in its 107th days of continuous mass genocide, displacement, ethnic cleansing, thirst, starvation, maiming of Palestinians at the hands of the Zionist colonial apartheid military, are all under the sponsorship and unconditional support of the USA. This reminds us of the war crimes and crimes against humanity that took place in historic Palestine during the first Nakba, or what we call it, the ethnic cleansing war of 1948. Antony Blinken visited occupied Palestine and met with Netanyahu and the war cabinet 5 times since October 7th, and on the top of his agenda is the release of the Israeli prisoners in the captivity of the Palestinian Resistance and disarmament of Hamas and forming a puppet political regime like the one in Ramallah. While the USA consecutive administrations never intervened to release any Palestinian political prisoner out of 1 million who were arrested by the Zionist establishment of occupation forces since its establishment, including those with chronic illness, administratively detained children and women. The American administrations never did a checklist to examine the Israeli commitment to Oslo Agreement or pushed to establish the promised Palestinian state, a provision signed on 30 years ago under the so-called two-state solution, or illusion as we say. It turned out to be that the USA was only deceiving the PLO through managing the crisis the American way, not solving it from its roots. The same imperial colonial ideology which manifests the culture of supremacy, greediness, racism, and death is still governing the world system of today. The same world system which created the State of Israel at the expense of the Palestinian people and waged global wars and proxy wars has not changed. On the contrary, it will continue to seize any opportunity to deceive the Palestinians and the people of the world, and will continue to advance and nourish the same culture of death, hegemony, and wars for the interest of the few imperialists. The illusion that the Zionists want peace has been revealed through their terrorist measures over the past 75 years of occupation, including the 30 years of deception, but even more through their rampage and war on Gaza since October 7th. This occupation is the cruelest form known to mankind. Its apartheid policies are worse than those practiced in South Africa and like those of Nazi Germany. The USA had never opened its eyes to see the mounting pressure under the surface for the past 17 years of siege and blockade of Gaza, or the deprivation of 2,300,000 people of their basic human rights, such as the right of having clean water, food, medical care, proper shelters, freedom of movement, and political activity. Now, after October 7th, the USA has remembered that the Palestinians must have their own state, but it should be according to their conditions. Now, it admits that the death toll in Gaza has reached unprecedented count of 30,000, including those who are still under the rubble, in addition to more than 60,000 injured and 1.5 million displaced. Over 75% of the percentage of the casualties are children and women. Now, the USA had admitted that Zionist storyline about the Israeli settlers' babies being beheaded, burned, and women being raped was a big lie to mislead the international public opinion. Gaza today has reminded the people of the world of their own miseries under the current savage, monstrous, imperialist colonial world system, and most importantly, it showed them the power of being united. Gaza today has inspired the free people all over the world to rise up in millions for the common interest of humanity, social justice, equality, and liberation. It is time to abolish and dismantle the colonial apartheid regime. It is time to establish a single democratic state of Palestine based on human rights and international law, which preserves social justice, equality, cultural diversity, liberty, and freedom for all. It is time to disconnect and disengage with all forms of political regimes based on oppression and subjugation of other nations. It is time to cut ties with imperialist and colonial regimes. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you.